Welcome back to our outdoor cooking series. I'm Karina Boxnick. I'm the State 4-H Camping Coordinator. Tonight we're going to do another dinner. We're going to go fairly simple again today, but we're going to use the Dutch oven in a couple of different ways as well as the cast iron skillet. Tonight we're going to do beef stew, cornbread, and peach cobbler. So we've got to get the stew going because it'll take a little bit for it to cook. In my stew I've got beef, potatoes, carrots. I use beef broth, and I also use the packets of stew seasoning. You can make your stew however you prefer. I pre-browned my beef, that way I didn't have to have that extra step while we were out here. Depending on the camp situation that I'm going to be in, I may even partially cook my potatoes and my carrots just so it doesn't take as long to cook. I like to use stew kind of on a first day into a wilderness trip. It's an easy dinner to have, that way you can kind of get it started and set up camp while everything is cooking. So I'm going to put this stuff on the fire. I've got the same thing in both the bucket and the Dutch oven. I'm going to hang the bucket and I'm going to put the Dutch oven kind of on some coals and some fire. That way you can see how the rack is used, but also that you don't have to have a rack. And if you do have a rack and want to hang your Dutch oven, you can absolutely do that as well. I'm going to get my glove because my fire is pretty hot. I'm going to take my stuff over. This bucket I'm going to hang on one of these hooks on this rack. I'm going to slide it over here to the heat. And this Dutch oven, I already pulled out a few coals, but it is primarily going to use the heat from the fire. So make sure, especially on this oven, that you check on it periodically and rotate it, because all of your heat is going to be on one side and you don't want that side to burn while the other side doesn't cook. So stay tuned. I'm going to keep an eye on this and we'll come back and get peach cobbler and cornbread started. Welcome back. Our stew has been cooking. I have turned that Dutch oven several times, kind of moved it on and off the heat based on whether my liquids were boiling or not and what I felt like needed to be done. Because we don't have any coals on top of that Dutch oven, I didn't worry about turning the lid, so I would just turn it half a turn at a time so it would cook evenly on both sides. So we're fixing to get started on our peach cobbler. This is just a real simple peach cobbler recipe. It uses just sliced peaches. I've got 2 cans in my small Dutch oven, and I like to use this cinnamon swirl cake mix, whether it's gluten-free or not. And the reason I like to use this one versus another cake mix is that it has a separate packet in here for the seasoning that goes on top to make the extra crust and make it sweet. It's got cinnamon and sugar and that kind of thing in that packet already, and I don't have to worry about bringing that separate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of sprinkle the cake mix part over my peaches. Let me get this out of the way. And I'm just going to ignore what the package says as far as cooking this as a cake. Because I have a smaller Dutch oven and less amount of peaches, I'm not going to use the whole thing. We can save it for another cobbler. But then I'm going to just kind of poke it down in there so that the peach juice comes up over top, and that juice will act as the moisture for the cake. You don't need to worry about mixing any water or eggs or anything like that, depending on what that package says. And like I said, it's just a basic cobbler recipe. If you have one of your own that you want to try, go for it. You can cook just about anything in your Dutch oven or on the campfire that you could at home in your regular oven. But definitely make sure you're paying attention to any food safety considerations as well, even though we're outside. So I'm going to set this aside. We won't put this on until the very end. I'm going to grab my Dutch oven. I've already got some coals pulled out to put underneath this. Remember, we're going to do about twice as much on top as we do on bottom. I'm going to move some of these big pieces out of the way so I can reach in there and get my coals. And if you have some that come out big, that's totally okay, because you're looking for that heat and you're going to maintain it and keep an eye on it. If you feel like it's too much heat, when you check on it, just pull some of your coals off. If you feel like it's not enough, just add some more to it. And again, this is where those wrist-sized pieces of wood come in. They work really well for making good coals. Try to avoid getting any more ash than absolutely necessary. Alright, so we're going to leave that there. We're going to let it cook. I'm going to check on it periodically. And every time I check on it, I'm probably going to turn the whole Dutch oven a half a turn one way, but also turn the lid a half a turn as well. That way, if there's any hot spots on top or bottom, you're evening those out across your cobbler that you're cooking. I'm also going to get my cast iron skillet because we are going to cook cornbread, and I need to preheat this skillet. Set all this stuff out of the way. And I don't have the cast iron skillet lid. This is a Dutch oven lid. Notice it's got the lip because I'm going to need the coals on top. So I brought a Dutch oven lid so that I can add coals on top after I get my cornbread going. So I'm just going to set this whole thing over here on this grate. I am going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to add some butter to it here in a little bit after it heats up to melt the butter so it's got a nice non-stick coating on it before I dump the cornbread in there. But keep an eye on it. Don't let it get too hot because your butter will burn. All right, so keep an eye on it. If you need to move it off the heat, you definitely can do that. Stay tuned and we'll get back to it when we get ready to put the cornbread in there. All right, welcome back. We have our cornbread mixed up. I just used a box mix. You can use whatever cornbread recipe you would like. I'm gonna set it down right here, being as clean as I possibly can because I need some extra hands. I'm gonna lift this lid out. Our skillet has been preheating. Stir some butter around in there. Just giving it a good coat. Alright, I'm going to hang my lid up here, I hope. I don't want to set it down. I'm going to go ahead and just dump my cornbread mix in. I'm going to slide it over. I'm going to heat just a little bit more. I'm done with this. I'm just going to kind of tilt this around so it'll kind of cover my cast iron skillet a little bit better. Trying to heat up, and I'm going to put the lid back on. I'm going to slide my stew out of the way so I can get some coals out of my fire. So we're going to use this skillet kind of like an oven, which is why I brought the Dutch oven lid, because we need some top heat. Gonna have to fish around for the ones that look good. So we've got some heat going on that skillet. Now we need to check our cobbler. reach in and I'm gonna grab the lid. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a shake, so hopefully I won't get any ashes in my cobbler. Take a look, it's starting to get hot over here on this side, so I'm gonna turn it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do about a half a turn on the bottom. And then without lifting the lid, I do just a half turn with the lid. That way it'll move that heat around on the top as well as the bottom. So we're gonna let our cornbread cook. We're gonna let our cobbler keep cooking. So I'll check back with y'all in a little bit. All right, welcome back. I've been turning this peach cobbler, checking on it periodically. I've turned it a couple of times and it is just about ready to put the extra sugary crust on the top. So, and again, I'm gonna kind of wiggle it a little bit, make sure there's not any loose ashes. And I'll hold it off to the side because you're always gonna get ashes, unfortunately. Just extra flavor. Just kind of sprinkle it around in there. Alright, I'm going to put the lid back on and I'll come back and spread that out in just a little bit. We also need to check on our cornbread. So we're going to do the same thing with this lid. I'm going to get a hold of it, wiggle it around to make sure I'm not going to lose any big chunks right into my cornbread. And I'm going to lift straight up. It's starting to come along. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this lid back on and then I'm going to give it about a half a turn. And I'm going to do the same thing with my pot. And then stay tuned and we'll come back. Welcome back. We're finishing up our dinner. If you want to come take a look at the finished result in each of these. So in the Dutch oven and in the bucket we have the stew. Over here in the skillet, we have the cornbread. Remember, give it a little wiggle. And I checked it a little while ago and it's nice and done. It's not burnt on the bottom. You'll notice it's thinner on one side than the other. I've got a little bit of a slope to my grill grate that I'm sitting on, so some of it kind of floated to one end. And then for dessert, we've got our peach cobbler. Give it a little wiggle. And our sugar and cinnamon are caramelizing nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully dump these lids off back into the fire, trying not to get any ashes into my food. We'll plate this up and we'll be back.
And as customary with our Outdoor Skills videos, I'm Jesse Boxley, the Arkansas 4-H Outdoor Skills Coordinator, coming from behind the camera to taste test. If you're interested in 4-H outdoor skills or 4-H camps, stay tuned to our social media channels.